Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show, and Stephen Harris jumping in there just in the nick of time. You might have heard a little doot. If you hear that, folks, that is when basically people join the show. So hello, Stephen Harris. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Paul, and good evening, Boa. Great to be on the show. Always a privilege and a pleasure.
I've not said hello to him yet. People don't know he's here yet, especially on the podcast. But we can move on to that now then. Good evening, Boa. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Baines. Good evening, Mr. Harris, and good evening, each and every one, wherever you are on planet Earth, joining us for the highlight of the week. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely, and I see there that Stephen's already gone to his drink, but which is a very mundane water. Whereas me, I'm on to the old Moa Brewing Platorius XPA for me. Oh no, it's a special. Oh wow, sparkling pumped up. Wow. Get your product on there, Stephen. We know people, folks. Yes, buy some pumped up, especially if you're in the Auckland area from petrol stations. Well, it's got to keep Mr. Harris in business. There we go. And folks, yes, you might have noticed we've been on a bit of life support for the past 5 weeks because I've had a full-time work job with the Electoral Commission. Mr. Harris has been really busy with his job. Arshvin has kicked off his job as well. So we've all been quite busy. If you want to know the details behind that, you can head over to NZ Sport Radio for pulling back the curtains, where I talk about what's been going on and how we're hoping to now get back into growth mode and improving New Zealand sports radio from now on. So head over to NZ Sport Radio, say for that article. Yep, Stephen, it's been a bit of a tough kind of month, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Contrary to some reports out there, there's been no collusion. We haven't had a falling out. We've just been absolutely busy. That's all it is. So no collusion.
There's been a fake, yes, definitely. There's fake news.
Fake news.
Keep counting, right? Keep counting. We've got to make sure we get the right result here for New Zealand Sport Radio. All the votes count. Now we've got our bit of politics out of the way. Simon Hughes says he's had a bit of talk about the changing structure in the Mitre Cup. That will be one of the things we'll talk about. We've got a new TV rights deal in Australia as well, which is interesting. Obviously, the Mitre Cup, who will get relegated? Well, if there is relegation, and who will make the playoffs? We'll have a quick chat about that today. The Rugby Championship, obviously, they've got the All Blacks versus Argentina coming up. And as Boa said, it was Father Christmas giving out Christmas cards at the weekend. So he would like to have a chat about that, I think. Might want to be talking about his high tackle framework, especially with what happened there as well. And also we've got the Autumn Nations Cup, or the ANC, kicking off, or what's been known as the Amazon Cup by a few people in Europe, because it's going to be on Amazon over there. So yes, going straight to streaming. Are they going to be the new superpower in sports media streaming? I don't know, but they're having a go with the Autumn Nations Cup up there. For those of you that don't know, we come to you live. If you're listening to the recording, this comes out live at 8 p.m. every single Tuesday, and you can join us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, and give us your comments during the show. Ask any questions you like. We've got Nocturnal Rights and Simon here on YouTube, which is nice to see you guys there this evening. And also, you can listen to us on the go if you're wanting to listen to us in your car. Yeah, there's a podcast. Just search for New Zealand Sport Radio on your favourite podcatchers. Or apparently nowadays, if you put New Zealand Sports Radio podcast into Google, it'll just take you to your podcatcher and our show. Wow, the world is becoming connected, if you hadn't already guessed. Wow. Now, I've done a lot of talking there. Stephen, as we're showing that we are still got a good bro love going on, what topic would you like to kick off with this evening?
Oh, listen, I think we probably should quickly jump into that Mitre Cup and decide who's going to get relegated from the championship. It's going to be a really interesting round, and it really could come down to, I'm thinking maybe that North Harbour Bay of Plenty game, because I can see Wellington getting past Manawatu quite comfortably. Auckland, given their injury issues, although they did rest a few players, I can just see Canterbury. You saw Canterbury get up a level or two against Tasman last weekend. And I think they're the sort of side, when they are desperate, they will treat this as a final. I think they will get past Auckland, and I do believe it will come down to that game between Bay of Plenty and North Harbour. Unfortunately, the loser of that game will probably fall down. You feel a little bit for both of these teams. They haven't played too badly at all, and Harbour will probably regret their slow start to the season, and also a 1 point loss to Southland down in Invercargill.
No question. I think Harbour, Bay of Plenty, as you rightly pointed out, Stephen, you got a feel for the team who goes down, because it just goes to show how competitive this year's Mitre 10 has been. And I think there's been a lot of interest, a lot of community interest. Also, given that, we've rolled on from Super Rugby Aotearoa and the whole post-COVID, there's been a lot of interest, lots of players coming back into the country, the overall quality and intensity, key statistics like the ball live in play, time has increased. And of course, players really vying for professional contracts and spots on a playing team roster has really pushed the competition to its edge. So, yeah, really looking forward to it this week. Auckland, despite all the injuries, as I said a couple of shows ago, they've really done some planning pre-season, and all that is now coming to fruition. So, going to be a very, very interesting weekend of games this weekend.
Just one point here. I've just noticed. Here I am. I've got them pulled up the official Mitre 10 Cup table, and they managed to somehow put the championship above the Premiership, doing it in alphabetical order, when the Premiership is the top competition. Come on, boys. Let's have a bit of a bit more professionalism here with your display of your tables and get them the right way round for a start. I'm looking at that thinking, Hawke's Bay, top of the table. That's an interesting one. Oh no, it's the Championship. So yes. Also, breaking, folks. Super Rugby Aotearoa will be, they're announcing their schedule for next year. Apparently, the Blues will be kicking off on the 27th of February. So anyway, we'll as we get more news on that, I will we will definitely talk about it in the second half of the show, as I believe it comes out at 8:30 p.m. today. We've maybe got a little bit of sneaky news there.
Paul, I was going to say, just before we break away from the Mitre 10 Cup, it's going to be...
Oh, no, we've got lots more than 10 Cups to go. Don't worry. That was just quick teasers what's happening later in the show.
I was going to say the Championship's quite interesting as well, because it's still alive. Obviously, by the look of it, three teams well and truly confirmed for the finals. But of course, Northland and Southland battling it out for that fourth place. Southland travel to Pukekohe to take on Counties Manukau, and they are requiring, by the look of it, a 4-point win, maybe one with a bonus point to make sure. And Northland, well, they will require a win over Waikato, but they can afford a loss as long as they pick up 2 points. So they'll be looking to score 4 tries and an extra bonus point, which will put them on 21 points. Now, they'll be equal with Southland, but on a count back, it was a case of who beat who. I think it's Northland that will scrape through, but boy, that hard to know how that could end up. On saying that, Southland and Northland could both lose, and it's pretty much how the table lies. And there's plenty to play for the top two teams, with Hawke's Bay and Otago, because it's probably a case of trying to get a home semi-final. Although down in the Hawke's Bay at the moment, I would almost say McLean Park is probably still a little bit underwater at this stage after all that deluge of rain that they received in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, there might be an element there of that they have to move it because of the because the conditions. Where are they playing this week? They're at least they're away in Taranaki this weekend. And actually, that trip over to Taranaki, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So I was reading that there's been a recent change in the travel rules. Maybe it's a couple of years ago now. That previously, if your trip was over 4 hours by coach, you got to fly. But they changed that now to 6 hours by coach before you were allowed to fly, which clearly means that things like Taranaki to Auckland previously were a flight. Now, if Taranaki play Harbour or Auckland or Counties, they have to drive, for example. So And that was cut down on travelling costs. So I wonder, do you reckon Hawke's Bay or Napier to New Plymouth, is that a 6-hour drive, or will they be flying over?
That's an interesting. As you have mentioned it, I'm just Googling it at the moment, Paul, so I'll be back to you very, very shortly with that.
So yes, it'll be interesting to see whether they do get to whether they get to fly or whether they get to coach. But Napier up to Tauranga, for example, is a coach trip for the Hawke's Bay boys, because they were jumping on the coach straight after the coach trip back. Now, one of the issues with this, obviously, is that there's no post-match function for the socialising, which I think is a bit of a shame to see that having disappeared. I did talk with Andrew Strawbridge about that the other week, and he was saying, yeah, it comes down to cost, that they will pop into the sheds afterwards and have a chat. But yeah, it does come down to cost for those. So what does Google say, Steve?
5 hours and 20 minutes.
There we go.
So they'll be bussing.
They'll be bussing. There we go. So yeah, it's going to be a tough. That's a long old trip to then go play a game, and especially when you're jumping into a coach straight after the game, your body's stiffening up. You're having to sit down. You can't move around or stretch or do the proper recoveries that you're supposed to do. Sit in an ice bath or whatever they do. It sounds horrible to me, that does. But anyway, so yeah, if you got to say, yeah, even if they do win that one and travel home, that's got to impact their following week. So the fact that they were up in Bay of Plenty last week, long coach trip back after the game, a long coach trip now, those things we don't normally take into account when we're doing our predictions around these games, but it definitely is going to take its toll on its players, isn't it, Bar?
Absolutely, no question about it. So really interesting this year, obviously, with COVID-19 and all these cost-cutting measures. It's interesting, but at the same time, I'm actually quite happy that some of these, professional teams are willing to go through these arduous processes and, experience what most amateur or semi-professional teams would. So, look, it is what it is. Hopefully, it doesn't take too much of a toll, but traveling constantly, being on the road and having to go and play contact sport is very, very difficult. And you are absolutely right. When we do make our predictions, we need to take this into consideration. And that's why this weekend, I'm actually really bullish on Northland Taniwha getting up. And I'm actually going to tip them to win and win with a bonus point. So watch out for the Taniwha.
With a bonus point over Waikato. What have you been smoking, sir? You do realise that referendum got lost. You do. You understand that, don't you?
Well, the reason I say that is the Taniwha, the improvement has been tremendous. And of course, one key statistic you're seeing with Northland is that their handling errors have really come down and they're playing some good continuous footy. And I think that's going to keep them in good stead. They're the form horse, in my view. It's going to be upset of sorts. Very bullish on Northland beating Waikato with a bonus point.
Go on, Stephen. You're the Northland boy.
Oh, I'll go along with what he says. I don't believe it for a moment, but I'm just going to go along with that. I'll run with that.
Dear. Now, this weekend, unfortunately, fortunately, I've got my daughters this weekend, but unfortunately, that means I can't get to any games this weekend. So I won't be going to any games. But we do have a couple of very popular videos from our games last weekend. I got to interview a couple of guys about the events that were put on for Nathan Strongarm, who unfortunately he's the ex-Bay of Plenty and ex-Waikato player centre, who unfortunately is suffering with cancer at the moment. So you can go listen to the events that they've got going to support him. But Stephen, you also had a very popular video from the weekend as well with one of the Auckland players from Northland.
Yeah, a young fellow who made his debut for Auckland on the weekend, plays for Ponsonby in the Gallagher Shield competition, and that was Terrell Pater making his debut, and he is a Northland boy from the Hokianga up there in the far north, and he's a young fellow who came down here to Auckland to school. I think he may have schooled at Mount Albert Grammar. He's certainly a lovely young kid and very, very sizable as well. But of course, I copied it into his local club up north, and yeah, we got some nice likes on the page and a lot of comments, and just want to wish the young man all the very, very best, of course, from that Auckland under-19 team last year that played down at the Jock Hobbs the tournament in Taupo. There were 4 Northland boys in that under-19 side. Of course, Rob Rush, who's currently playing for Northland, Terrell Pater, and also Hedemaya Murray, and of course John Latu, who's a number 8, also from Ponsonby. Very, very good kids, and great to see. Listen, they're taking their opportunities in the big city. And interesting, Boa, while Paul's sorting his jerseys out, I just looked at the draw for the weekend. Now, one advantage Northland will have, the county's Manukau Southland game is actually on Friday night. It's the first up game in the Mitre 10 Cup, so Northland will know exactly what they have to do when they lock horns with Waikato on a Saturday. But of course, I think Waikato still have got a lot to play for. They'd be really disappointed with that last-minute loss against Bay of Plenty on a Sunday, a game that Paul was out, and we saw some great videos, Paul, that you released from that game.
Well, we didn't actually, because I'm not releasing them, but I do need to release them. Yes, absolutely. Sorry. I don't think I released them. I need to very quickly get them uploaded. So they'll go up tonight after the show. But yes, I had a chat with Luke Jacobson after that game. Yeah, they were disappointed, but you got to say that Clayton McMillan was obviously very happy, as was I've gone blank as to who from the Steamers I interviewed. I know I wanted to interview their final try scorer, Joe, but unfortunately he's a bit camera shy, and so I ended up actually with Mitch Carpick instead, because so the original person I wanted to talk to was too camera shy. You can't say that for the ladies, by the way. At the probables versus possibles at the weekend, fantastic game there. The Black Ferns squads have been announced for the games this weekend. Unfortunately, I can't get along to that one in Henderson, but should be a cracker against Barbarians. And I did do some wonderful interviews from there. So do catch those if you can. Some again on the New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page. So it's a cracking weekend there. From each of you then, from Boa, let's start with you then. Who in the Premiership is going to finish last and that may get relegated, depending on our next discussion, and who is going to make the playoffs?
Well, relegation. I'm actually looking at Wellington. Again, form line's been a bit scratchy, and as far as really like how Canterbury responded with, as Stephen rightly mentioned, they look really desperate. They look like they were someone who's been pushed to a corner, and boy, they came up pulling out all the stops. So a little bit worried for the Lions. Really bullish on Canterbury. Okay, so interesting there for because I mean Wellington have got Manawatu, so wow, I can't see that happening. Stephen, you in your so you're down to between Bay of Plenty and North Harbour. Money on the line. Which one is it?
Oh boy, I'll never. If I say North Harbour, Dave Worsley will never invite me back to North Harbour Stadium ever again. So I'm unfortunately going to go Bay of Plenty, and I'm sorry to all those Bay of Plenty supporters out there, but they'll probably prove me wrong and beat North Harbour. But it'll be one of those two teams. On saying that, boy, you never know. I fired up. I mean, to say Auckland supporters would love nothing better than to roll Canterbury down in Christchurch. But you saw the level Canterbury are capable of, and I think they will just take it up a gear against Auckland. So unfortunately, Bay of Plenty, unfortunately.
Well, okay. So we've got Wellington and Bay of Plenty. Myself, I'm going for Canterbury. I just think Auckland, as you say, will want to put them down and will do so. So I'm going for I'm going for Canterbury. I just can't see Wellington losing to Manawatu, but I think Auckland really will want to put Canterbury down and go in with some good good momentum into the final series. So there you go, folks. 3 different teams from us. Shows you how close it's going to be. Shows you how you really need to pay attention to it this weekend. And also join us at 8 p.m. on Sunday evening for the Rugby Review Show once we know what the answer is.
I'm just sensing this weekend we're going to see a number of upsets. It's just we're at that point in the season where I think some of these underdogs are going to come up with that one-off performance we've all been waiting for. And my personal take is that this is the weekend, so watch out.
So it's going to be cracking. And with those results, as I say, with three of us getting three different people getting relegated, who knows what the top four are going to look like. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. So then, as Stephen says, I was putting up my jerseys, and there was a reason for that. It wasn't just me, and that was basically because, as you can probably tell, we love the Mitre 10 Cup on this channel. Stephen and I have been to a lot of games, as Ashwin as well goes on to do all the Auckland games as well. Boa, you clearly follow it very closely, as you've been telling us about different stats from those teams. So, look, it's a competition that we do love, and to see Mark Richardson to be coming out and suggest changes purely on a financial point of view, not on a performance point of view, I find really disappointing, and that's why I put the jerseys up to support our Mitre 10 Cup provinces, and that's so that's why I was doing it during the show. So the rumours are that they're going to split the Mitre 10 Cup into a North and a South division, the way they have done with the Farah Palmer Cup this year, and then just have two semi-finals and one final to finish. Currently, we have four semi-finals and two finals, one for the Premiership, one for the Championship. Pardon me. So that would mean 3 less games as well as reduced travel. Thoughts on this change, Boa? What are your thoughts on this change to go north-south?
Yeah, look, obviously financial constraints, economics has put huge pressure, and I completely understand some of the boardroom decisions and Mark Robinson and his board wanting to go down this route. But I, for one, I am completely against it. I want to see these provinces, I want to see these communities being represented. All it's going to do is limit the number of players, limit the number of run on time, and also limit the number of games. So I think the current format is great. It's giving players plenty of opportunity, and also we're seeing some cracking games. Whether it's fully financially viable, well, according to NZR, it isn't. But maybe they need to explore some further opportunities and desperately look to hang on to this same format for at least maybe another season. Purely because we're seeing some cracking games. We're seeing a lot of high quality players coming back into New Zealand who obviously wouldn't have otherwise played rugby, because of COVID-19 and movements with contracts, etc. So I'm not a fan of the new split or the new rumored split. I say keep this format, try it for another season. We're just going to see better and more high quality, more high intense games at Mitre 10/NPC level.
Stu?
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I think back to the Farah Palmer Cup, where if you look at the top 4 teams that made it through, I don't necessarily think you probably may have seen the best 4 teams go through, and that's a little bit of my concern with this format. You're just basically putting it in such a structure from areas. Are you going to get the best teams there at the end of the day? I'm not so sure. It's a little bit weird too. I mean, say if you win the championship this year, do you go up, or is this structure not for next year, or is it a couple of years away, Paul?
The argument is potentially for next year. But scurrilous rumours suggesting that this is a Canterbury thing to stop them from getting relegated I don't think it's true. All joking aside, no, it does. The rumours are that it is for next season. And also, if we look at that north-south format, as you say, not necessarily the best teams got through, with Northland and counties missing out. But you've got teams like North Harbour that got 2 points, no wins. Taranaki got just the 1 win. Tasman also no wins. Hawke's Bay just the 1 win. Putting those teams in with it just creates more uneven games, which isn't good for the competition, isn't good for the quality of rugby. And I'm not saying we necessarily end up with the same situation in the men's game because it's more developed than the women's game. And the women's game is still much more amateur at that level. And some of those programs are only a year or two old. Whereas, look, let's be honest, the men's programs are 100 odd years old. It's Waikato's 100th year next year, for example. So these programs. So I'm not saying it would necessarily be exactly the same, but it gives you an indication that you're going to end up with more lopsided games potentially. Is Canterbury going to get much, or Tasman in this case, going to get much? Going to get the same sort of test in the south? We saw Canterbury run away with it in the Farah Palmer Cup. So to me, I'm not a fan of it. They are saying that they would keep the crossover games, so you still have 4 games crossing between the two conferences. That way, the Ranfurly Shield can move backwards and forwards, which was a key decision apparently. So to me that's at least a slight saving grace within this. Clearly, Arswin doesn't understand the idea of this. He's saying, can't we split the island left, east, and west, up and down? That doesn't reduce the amount of travel, sir. The whole point of this is reducing travel. It's not about improving the format. It's about cost. And splitting it north-south would not, putting a line down the country, say east-west, would not work for that one. So yes, no, that would not be a good move. I guess, look, roundly here, we're all anti it. And I think what we're seeing here is a bunch of nests coming home to, a bunch of hens coming home to roost here. For many years, New Zealand Rugby has just looked after brand All Blacks as far as money generation goes. They've seen Super Rugby and Mitre Cup purely as a conveyor belt for players and as a cost, not a money generating space. And by giving it no love on the marketing side of things, really have seen crowds and revenue dwindle in those competitions. So they've had to be subsidized more and more. Whereas if they put more effort into marketing those competitions, having them become, I'm not saying they could be fully self-funding, but having them slightly more self-funding would have meant that that we wouldn't be in this much trouble now when it came to COVID. So I think a number of hens coming home to roost. Now, Mark Richardson isn't the guy to blame for that. That's more a Steve Chu issue over the last, or even the person before him. But because look, they used to have big crowds at these events. Jack says, look, stop playing 2 games at the same time. The reason they play 2 games at the same time is because the competition is about live audience more than being just purely a TV generate kind of competition. And they get better crowds at 2 p.m. or more people want to turn up at 2 p.m. to watch again than they do on Thursday night at 9 a.m.
And also, I think, sorry to interrupt, Paul, it's important that we have a full round robin, especially at NPC level, purely because, most of these guys, this is the pathway or the entrance into professional rugby. So they need to get used to the whole, that lifestyle, that wanting the attitude to go out, play professional rugby week in, week out. Travel is very much part of it. By actually curtailing that, we're not preparing players who will have necessarily the right type of grounding as they progress through the ranks. So my personal view is that it's really important that we have a full round robin. I think we have a great format, and I think we're starting to get some really good community engagement. And there's real sense of intensity just looking at the statistics right across the competition. And it's really important from player and quality of rugby development that we have a good solid round robin, because what I'm starting to now see is that even in the provincial unions with the club competition, they're starting to take this direction purely based on economics, and they're looking at trying to merge clubs And all that's going to do is curtail and drop the amount of opportunities for players who can go and represent a premier team.
Paul, I was going to say something. I think New Zealand Sport Radio has done really, really well. We haven't always gone, when we've done our after-match interviews, we haven't always gone to known players. Like, for example, I did Terrell Pater on the weekend, and you could just basically see the response we got from family and friends, other people who probably wouldn't always be that engaged on that sort of platform. And throughout the year, I know you did the story on Nathan Strongman as well, Paul. And once again, it's just that community feel, people wanting to contribute, whether it's with a comment or a like. And when it comes to community engagement, boy, the New Zealand Rugby Union, they just absolutely drop the ball. They think we want to see these generic videos of All Blacks just finishing their training at a press conference. And quite frankly, for me, it's very tired. But what I do like about the Mitre 10 Cup, where you've got a young guy who's on his debut, you just get a different audience. You get new people watching, new people engaging, and I just think it's really important for our game. You get those interests from the aunties, the uncles, sisters, brothers, other people start tuning in. It's just we've just got to become a little bit more engaging at those lower levels, and like I say, it does my head in.
100%, and it's all about community engagement, and I think that's the beauty of the Mitre 10 Cup. It's starting to do that, and if you want to broaden your horizon and get more of what I would call fresh engagement, not the usual generic stuff which we're fed through the sponsor. I'm not going to name the sponsors, but I'm talking about all that marketing stuff. The community engagement is absolutely critical, because 99% of your game, or the growth of the game, comes from the grassroots at community level. It's the professional level, the highest level is just less than 1% of the entire slice. So trying to put all your eggs in that basket is actually counterproductive.
Yeah, and we get the opportunity to talk to people like Luke Jacobson. We've talked to Aaron Smith. I'm trying to which other, Sam Kane. We've talked to those sort of people. We find that the videos, as Stephen said, with the lesser people who don't get to who don't get the exposure, are the ones that actually give us the better views. And it's what people. And at the end of the day, you can say, we do complain that some websites have become clickbait and they just go for views. That's not how we've done that. When we see views, it's because that's what people want to see and people are sharing it. And that's what. So yes, we are. We definitely see that there is a whole crowd of people who don't get any exposure. That if they did, a lot of people would be very interested in them entirely. So yes, it is. It's a real shame that they haven't put more effort in there. We are doing the best that we can to try and help grow the Mitre 10 Cup. Now, if you would like to help us, there are a number of ways to do it. Non-financially, obviously, turning up and watching our shows is fantastic. Thank you very much. Sharing our shows on the podcast. But if you'd like to help us financially, then you can head over to patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio, and you can sign up for $1 a month, and you get access to exclusive videos and articles as well that I put out, as well as helping support us to get round all these games and produce all this content for you. So yes, so there you go, folks. It'll be a real shame if the Mitre 10 Cup does go this way. We will still follow it and promote it. But we love the format it is now, and I think more promotion and growing it is the answer, not shrinking it. As Boa says, that the way we've seen the provinces do with their club rugby, is the way to go, folks. That grow smaller isn't always better. And as Archman says, for $1 a month, little Paul gets to eat. So yes, that way I get to eat. So cool. So look, that's half an hour of my 10 Cup chat, folks. And I say it is one of our favourite competitions of the year. But I do feel since Father Christmas came at the weekend, I do need to give Boa his time in the sun to talk about cards.
Well, where do I start? Guys, I have to say, this whole, Santa Claus giving out cards for Christmas, it was inevitable. Now, last week on the show, I was going on about some of those head-high challenges the Wallabies have been putting on, especially that shot which took out Sam Kane, which is Harry Wilson. Now, the problem here is, with these high shots, the current World Rugby high tackle framework, it looks great on a PowerPoint presentation because, everything goes nice. Yes, no, it's a nice flowchart. But the reality is you have to be delusional to think that it is going to work where, rugby is a contact sport, where, it's a fluid sport. It's just not practical enough for these situations where everything happens 100 times faster, especially at Test rugby. Let me be very clear. We're not talking about grassroots or we're not talking about amateurs. We're talking about Test rugby. Now, if Test rugby, if it was that easy, everyone would be playing it. But we're talking about a handful of professional athletes who do this week in, week out. And some of the hits you see, the monumental. And all it takes is a split second for things to go awry. Now, as seen on TV last Saturday, we had two, pretty fiery collisions, contact straight to the head. Now, according to the framework, the referee made the right call. But again, guys, the problem here is what coaches at the highest level are teaching these players to do, i.e. limit the space, dip late, last moment. And of course, what World Rugby want everyone else to do with their high tackle framework, i.e. making sure that they take the shoulder, chin, neck, head completely out of the equation. And of course, what fans understand is acceptable or what they think is acceptable. There's so much disjoint. This is causing a lot of confusion. And all it's doing is it's actually diluting the game. It's softening the game and it is absolutely ruining it. So a few weeks back, I've been, I spoke to you all about my STF, which is the Safe Tackle Framework. One of my suggestions was to have the Safe Tackle line, which is a visual guideline on all the playing shirts, sternum line and below. Now, again, this is not the be-all and end-all. It is a guideline. But, we're all human, and especially the referees, as we see, they're very prone to making mistakes. And I'll talk specifically about those two cards now, the Ofa Tungafasi red card.
No. Before you get on to that, let's talk about some of the points you have you have brought up there. Yes, it is a fluid game, and yes, there is going to be subjectivity within it. The problem is we either have a flow chart like we have now for red cards, or we have pure subjectivity. And we complained before that we have lack of consistency between games and within games. At least by having this flow chart, you get some consistency within it. But yes, it does mean that you take some of that understanding of the game out of the decision. But if you don't have, you can't have both things. You can't have consistency and also empathy. I'm afraid you either have one or the other. Now, you can argue whether we do get consistency or not, but you can see that World Rugby is trying for consistency in these decisions.
Well, be that as it may, if you actually look at the flow chart and actually what's happening, the flow chart basically expects players or ball carriers to run completely upright into a tackle. And as you saw in one of the tackles, clearly a player, dipped in actually both cards, they dipped. And, guys, we're talking about milliseconds. The reaction time is such a short time. And, you're coming in at such a fierce space. Now, Ofa Tungafasi's red card, the initial contact was the ball carrier's fist and wrist making contact with Ofa's chin. That meant that Ofa momentarily took his eyes off the target and he just followed through. That was just instinct and reflex. And what resulted was his shoulder completely flattening out the Wallaby's chin. Now, yes, according to the framework, that's a dead set red. But from a practical point of view, those sort of collisions are bound to happen at test level. Hence, that is why in my STF or safe tackle framework, I suggested an on-field orange card. So you're 10 minutes in the bin. This is the perfect situation, but it is an automatic judicial hearing straight away, 48 hours after the game. If there is a valid case to answer, as was the case with Swinton, the Wallaby, who has now been suspended for 4 games. Clearly, that was just a big shoulder charge. I've been going on about this dead arm technique these Wallabies use. They are coached. Now, don't for a moment believe the line they say that it was unintentional. Of course, it was intentional. These guys know what they're doing. It was a straight shoulder, straight to the head. We saw Harry Wilson do that to Sam Kane the week before. And also, we had Hunter Paisami using that same technique on Caleb Clark. So, these guys know what they're doing. Again, the onus is on the coaches and players to lower. You see this STL safe tackle line? They need to start using this, guys, and from World Rugby's point of view and referees' point of view, they need to start using some common sense so that they don't leave fans and the sport in a delusional state.
Now, it's very 1980s a stripe there. I remember having a Gap jumper with the same sort of stripe on it. And yes, look, World Rugby is trying to get tackles down there, and players need to bend their knees and tackle lower. And you're right, it comes down to coaching, and it's about when do coaches get the message that they need to train their players to tackle lower. Now, why are they tackling so high? It's because they're trying to wrap up the ball and stop the offload and the quick and try and have and try and have these dominant tackles. But look, those and until we just sort of get the coaches to change their mindset that actually, look, you can have a dominant tackle hitting around the sternum. You'll still probably you've got a good chance of knocking the ball out and loose and getting the knock on. So look, you're better off getting the guys down that bit and hitting there, because also they're driving upwards and they can actually make a dominant tackle. So yeah, you're right. It is about getting the coaches to change their tune. I disagree with you on the about the empathy and peace, that sort of side of things. But I do agree with you that we need to get that down lower. We did discuss the actual tackles at length. So I know there's a bunch of comments, particularly from Ashwin and Aaron, in the chat about the actual tackles. We discussed those at length on Sunday evening in the review show. So I don't intend to go back over these specific tackles, but just more the general card piece. Stephen, any other points you want to?
It's really interesting. You've got rugby league that puts a guy on report. They don't compromise. They don't compromise the actual game. It's not it doesn't become a mismatch. The game carries on. The guy who's put on report basically is taken care of by a judiciary. Either way, he's gonna get punished. I just hate the fact that people pay good money, really good money for test matches. We spoke about crowds struggling to fill Eden Park, struggling to fill Wellington Stadium. A couple of $100 is a hell of a lot to pay out for a test match. I would be really peeved off if I went to a game and there was a sending off, whether it was the team that the All Blacks were playing against, or even the All Blacks. To me, it just takes a lot of the experience away. I know there's a bit of risk involved, but I like what rugby league does. They put it on report. It's still an offence at the end of the day. The player's going to get punished via the judiciary. What is so wrong with that?
Okay, so is there a difference between playing amateur rugby league and NRL? Are the laws different? Do NRL have their own laws, or are the laws set from grassroots all the way to the top and are the same?
I think Paul, the administrators of rugby league realise that they're in the entertainment business exactly like rugby, so they will basically deal with it after the fact. I would imagine in amateur rugby league, it's pretty much the same. Players will go on report. Listen, different story if you see a player doing absolutely something really bad, like I don't know, like eye gouging, something like that, really, really bad foul play. But we also see situations where players taken in the air and they come down dangerous. Yeah, it's not a good look, especially if the player is injured. But I think if it is totally blatant and the referee's got no choice, yeah, that's when it does become a little bit tricky.
Yeah, look, guys, I think red cards have to be saved for what you would call, blatant foul play. If you kick someone in the head, if you punch someone, repeatedly, if you bite someone, eye gouge, something really nasty, So based on this logic, if we saw those 2 red cards, and let's say we take a situation like the week before where Daigunu took out Caleb Clark out in the end. Now, that should have been a red card. Again, we're starting to see this subjective. What do you do? Do you give Daigunu 2 red cards? Do you give him a darker color red card? This is where the problem is. And also, I have to say, in the same game, there were a number of other head-high contacts which met the red card criteria based on World Rugby's high tackle framework. But again, they were ignored, and clearly you could hear the referee telling the TMO and the toucher, "Oh no, it's just a penalty." So this is where the problem comes in. So I think some common sense, some sanity needs to prevail. World Rugby, I've spoken to you on a number of occasions, adopt the STF framework. Yellow, orange, red. Keep it simple. Don't take hours and hours to discuss this on the big frame, on the big screen, talking everything through. If it is a head die, if it looks dubious, orange card, he goes to the bin for 10.
So with games that are televised and we have multiple camera angles, I can understand where you're coming from, and I could get that. At amateur level, where there's no cameras, and you're going to go off basically people's memory of what happened, I don't think that it works in such a good way. And I prefer the deterrent of that red card, saying, look, you've turned up to play this weekend, and if you do something stupid, you're not paying the game. You don't get to do what you wanted to do this weekend, and therefore off you go. So I think if we went down that route, I think it'd be fine for televised games. But I think for amateur games that are not televised, I think we should. It should be. I'd stick with the current setup.
And guys, the other most critical part is there's just simply not enough education and coach player education around this high tackle framework and how to approach it. This is where the problem is. You can't just dump something on the game where there's a lack of education. It's like, speeding tickets and bad drivers. It's all very good handing out speeding tickets and demerit points. But if you have bad drivers, you're only going to see more speeding tickets and more demerit points. Instead, you need to teach people what to do. And this is where, particularly, the work I'm doing with STF Safe Tackle Framework, there has to be proper coach education. And no matter, especially at the highest level, all these coaches will say, no, we've got to tackle low. But soon as you go into their coaching camps and look at some of their contact drills, you see the choke tackle, you see the rep tackle. It is ridiculous. So this is one key area which World Rugby really needs to clamp down on. World Rugby have appointed Joe Schmidt as their high-performance coaching director. Joe Schmidt himself, I have seen them employ this rugby league style tackle where they're going nice and high and dipping late. Mm-hmm. So this is a huge challenge, guys. This is a huge challenge for World Rugby. They need to sort this out. The coaches need to sort it out. And also, what this will eventually do is, because World Rugby are going to double down and they're going to really stamp down on the head-eye contacts, there will be a significant game-changing decision which is going to come up over the next few weeks. And, the referee who pulls out the card, he or she is going to get thrown under the bus. That is what is going to happen.
Well, we'll see on that one. But you're right. And if I'm not careful, I'll end up diving down into a political rabbit hole here. But prevention is always better than cure. And as you say, so yes, education is better than cards, and that applies across the board for pretty much everything. But unfortunately, prevention has an upfront cost, and you don't see the kind of benefit, and people can't necessarily always associate the cost with the benefit that comes from that. And so that's why, hopefully that we will see better education. But I'm not going to hold my breath anytime soon with the current union setups we have.
All you got to do is put a safe tackle line and tell the guys tackle south of that line. Simple. That is it.
You're doing great work there, Boa. But when I actually see that on the training jerseys that the All Blacks are selling, then I'll start actually believing that we're actually going there.
Darren, all they need to do is write me a check. I will give them authority to use my safe tackle line trademark and safe tackle framework trademark, and that's it. And then hopefully I can pump some of that money back into this show, and then we get a bigger audience. There you go.
There you go. You see the rugby. Quick, buy it, sell. Dearie me. Look, I'm not sure there's much more we can say on that one really. Let's quickly on the new TV rights deal in Australia. I'll be honest. I have not read totally into this, but it sounds like $100 million bucks, which is decent money. It's apparently not as much as was originally offered by Fox, but that was pre-COVID, folks, and Fox would have negotiated that down big time come COVID. So it's a good deal about the kind of money that they could have expected. You got to say, Raelene Castle was doing the right thing going to market with the TV deal, even though she took a lot of flack in the press, in the Fox-owned press in particular, at the time. But we'll see. I think it was the right thing to do. They're going to have some games are going to be on free to air on Channel 9 in Australia, whatever that is. Let's be honest, it's a TV channel. I don't know how available that is. I don't even own a TV, let's be honest. And all the rest of the games are going to be streamed through a Netflix style streaming channel. That's a thing called Stan or something. Good to see that. So there's going to be stuff on free to air. I think is a good thing, Steve. Isn't it, Stephen?
Oh, listen, I think so as well. I know they were previously with Fox TV, and having been over to Australia on a couple of occasions, trying to find rugby via Fox is very, very difficult. I know even during the Rugby World Cup, being over in Australia at the time, finding the right coverage was just nigh impossible. There's a huge focus on the NRL on Fox. That's pretty much their puppy. So I think Channel 9 will basically broaden the horizon, even though probably selective games, but at least the most important thing will be the opportunity for a lot of rugby supporters to watch rugby. I know a lot of the supporters in Australia enjoyed watching the New Zealand Super Rugby when it was on, and I know there's quite a few that watch Mitre 10 Cup Rugby as well.
And talking of free, Bo, any comments on that? Otherwise, I've got another topic to.
Tremendous. Hopefully, Rugby Australia can pump some of that money back into the grassroots because, over the last sort of few years, the club rugby in the States have really struggled. And they've been actually guilty of, again, focusing too much on the top level, which is Wallabies. So tremendous for Australia. I think there's going to be more people watching the game. And, of course, some of that funding, if they use it wisely, will go to the the regional teams, and especially they've got a good following in the Shoot Shield and some of the provincial local club competitions, especially with the NRC, where they're trying to revamp it into a competition very similar to our NPC or Mitre 10.
NRC is dead. Okay, so the NRC is not part of the deal. The NRC will not exist next year. They're going for a state of origin style competition, which will replace the NRC. Now, I got to say, I got to disagree with you here. I think in some ways that the Shoot Shield is probably stronger than it's ever been, and that quite a lot of clubs, particularly in the Shoot Shield, have been basically just spent the money straight on players and trying to encourage players to come and play for them rather than actually spending it on proper grassroots. So I think the Perth Club Rugby competition is going really well, backed by Andrew Forrester. Obviously, he has serious cash there. But you're right, they need to grow out grassroots. But some of the top level grassroots competitions are going really well at the moment in Australia. And so Aaron says, have we been watching Match Fit? No, I haven't. But I will say this. Junior, Polly and Ganga, we're behind you, and the New Zealand Barbarians playing the old boys. So yeah, go Junior. He apparently it's match day today, so he apparently played in the game today. Junior, who we've interviewed previously on this channel, we're fully behind you, mate. Hope you went well in the Barbars game against the Match Fit guys. I don't know if anyone else has been watching that show. You have to?
Gents, there was one thing I did forget to mention. The two red cards, the victims who are at the receiving end of the tackles or the high tackles, neither left or neither were taken off the field for an HIA. Neither were taken. So clearly a serious lapse there. And again, guys, this is what I'm talking about. If World Rugby and all the officials and everyone are serious about making the game safe, they need to spend lesser time actually, because no one actually comes to watch the referees go on and on and on and pull out cards. If they're serious about player welfare and safety, concussion and head injuries, that is the first thing they need to do. And of course, Swinton's suspension, the 4-match suspension, that clearly shows that the judicial system is working. I think the 4 matches is quite a fair ban, depending on the severity, and they have sanctions well laid out. It was a medium grade charge, so I was lucky to actually get 4. It should have been 6. So yeah, again, just adds more fuel to the fire of my argument. Have an orange card, send him off for just 10 minutes. Don't kill the game, and let the judiciary handle it.
Right, we're not going back to cards. No more cards talk. I do agree with you, though. The players who got hit should have gone off HIAs. Yes, more HIAs, folks. But no, we're talking about old fellas playing other old fellas on the Barbarian side of things. So yes, we're fully behind them. I'm fully behind the New Zealand Barbarians on that one. So yes. Breaking news. Next year we will have Sky Super Rugby Aotearoa. They have taken Sky is going to have naming rights for Super Rugby Aotearoa. It's just been announced, and the schedule, as we told you earlier, will kick off on the 26th of February with the 10 weeks of games before a winner takes all final at the end of it. So when will that be? So the Chiefs will have an opening round bye. Apparently, I'm just trying to find the date of that final if they've mentioned it anywhere. But yeah, so starting, as we said earlier, on the 26th of February. So boys, what do you think of a 26th of February start? It's still summertime, isn't it? It's still cricket season.
Well, it's still. Tell you what, it's a little bit later than what it normally starts. Because if I think back to earlier this year, it actually started earlier, didn't it? Super Rugby.
It did, first week of February.
First week of February. So it's actually almost a month later, Paul. There you go.
But this year it started early because of the new international window, let's go back to when the first weekend of oh dear, because it's very difficult looking at Tribe Sports app as they're trying to get through all the different types of round ones and week ones and.
Friday the 31st of January was the
Friday
first
the
game.
Okay.
31st of January. Yeah, there you go.
But if we go back to last year, I'm pretty sure it was last weekend, the last weekend in 15th of February. Okay, so so slightly later than normal. You're quite right. So a later start than normal, which will be good. It means we have wetter, soggier ground than the dry, hard, fast ones. So, for those of you on the podcast, Stephen is shaking his head.
It won't be wet and soggy. It'll still be pretty hard. I think we'll still be pretty much in the middle of the cricket season at that point in time.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fast firm. It's gonna be a good 3 as opposed to a heavy 11 in horse racing terms.
Yeah. So the final will be on the 8th of May. Will be the with the top 2 playing off for a winner takes all. Which then, on the assumption that we get back to normality, which clearly we're not expecting to, we would then see the international window. International window is in July, in theory. So that still gives you a month and a half then to play potential crossover games with Super Rugby AU in that sort of super or sort of Champions Cup style competition afterwards. And I would imagine that's what that we're looking at doing in that window after the 8th of May would be my guess. And you'd hope that they are working with Super Rugby AU. Clearly, so it's with Australia Rugby. Clearly, Australia Rugby are only just have only just announced their TV deal. So clearly, some time before they get announced their actual dates. As the Hoshvin says, apparently Pfizer has cured us all. Yeah, well, I'll believe it when I've got the needle in my arm and curing me. So, but until then, that's I guess that's how it kind of fits in. There'll be now. This is one piece I disagree with here. Is that on the whole, it's going to be Friday and Saturday evening games. I think with 4 family-friendly Sunday afternoon kickoffs. One of the problems they've had in Australia is people can't remember when the games are on. If you have it at the same time every weekend, people just know. You just whack on the telly at 7 o'clock or 7:30 on a Friday night or Saturday night or 2 p.m. on a Sunday. But if you keep switching things around, people get out of that routine, and the casual fan can't just flick on the telly and watch a game. So. So I will. On that one, folks, I think they've made the wrong decision. They should either go for evening games or afternoon game, and just and have it one or the other, not switching it around. Because I think people won't know when to throw on their TV. People are creatures of habit. So I'm ashamed. So that piece I do disagree with, folks. Your thoughts?
Steve. Paul. Very, very valid point. Humans are habitual creatures, and especially casual fans. Given that Australia have announced this new TV deal, if they have it at the same time, you will see a lot of casual fans tuning in. But if they start, playing around with it and tinkering with this, it is going to cause a few issues. So I think starting early-ish February, it's going to have a good lead up. And once we wrap up Super Rugby, there's going to be ample opportunity to build on some run-on form, pick your squads, and then lead into the international test window. So I think it'll be really good. And if NZR work hand in hand with Rugby Australia, I think it's going to be a very fruitful and productive year. We're going to see a lot of high-quality games, and hopefully, financially, both unions will have a decent windfall.
I'm disappointed. Apparently, the match ended up with the match 15 finished 50, Barbarians 43. So Junior lost, was on the losing end of that game. It's a travesty. I say recount, play the game again. Fake news. It's all gone wrong.
I bet there were no
Not
red
being
cards. 93 points in the game, no red cards, no yellow. I bet there were plenty of high shots, but hey, they just got over it.
Oh dear.
Sorry, I had to get it.
I think we're done, guys, are we?
I think we are.
Fabulous. There's the Autumn Nations Cup kicking off this weekend. So I've got my daughter, so I probably won't be staying up all night watching all the games, but I will be the weekends afterwards. We'll get into more of that in the weeks to come. Great to see Fiji and Georgia getting the opportunity against tier 1 teams. I've got a funny feeling that Georgia are going to get absolutely pasted, and you'll learn actually that they wouldn't do any better than Italy in the Six Nations. But we will wait and see. It will be interesting to see how they go. But some fantastic to see Fiji get this opportunity, as long as they can all stay COVID-free, which is going to be the big thing. They've unfortunately had a couple of a few cases in their one. As Simon says, the Ireland-Wales match is at 8 in the morning on Sky Sports. I think it's 8 a.m. Saturday morning. So I might be able to catch that one. But apart from that, middle of the night games. Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us on the Driving Maul show. A pleasure to have you back yet again.
I'll be thanks again, Paul. Just to remember too, I will be attending a game this weekend. I will be up in Kaikoui, and I'll be we will be attending the Northern Taniwha the Waikato match. Hopefully by then Northern will know exactly what they have to do, and also Waikato as well will still be eyeing a place in the Premiership semi-finals. Yep,
hopefully. And I guess that's my only disappointing thing is I think that is that Auckland looks like having the only home final that we'll probably be able to get to, unless results go our way, so we can get to more of the semi-finals. But so go Auckland, beat Canterbury, finish top of the table. We might be able to get a semi-final and a final we can get along to bring you post-match reaction interviews from.
Just Paul, just before you do run, it will be interesting if Harbour are able to get the victory. That might almost see a first versus fourth place, and I'm pretty sure that the Auckland boys, they're still a little bit dark on that loss to Harbour over at North Harbour Stadium. So that would be a cracker if that game was on again at Eden Park.
Very true. Very true. Thank you very much, Boa, for joining us yet again. I see you're slowly building your studio in the same way that I am here, as we've both moved house recently.
Just one parting shot. This weekend, the round of upsets. So watch out. This time next week, we'll be talking about it. That much I'm sure. And go the Taniwha. Very, very keen on them. And I think bonus point win. That's going to be a huge upset.
Boa with his passing high shot there. On that one. Thank you very much, folks. Don't forget, we'll be back here at 8 p.m. next Tuesday. And also you can head over to patreon.com/NZ Sports Radio if you would like to support the channel.